Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 222.
Well, what's going on, Vice? Did you have a stutter for a moment there?
Just watch some Sonic YouTube poops, please.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. Damn.
Two.
The best.
The podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I am your host, Vysethebold, and this is
Lotus Prince.
And we have a much less stupid show than our intro. But we wanted to continue our coverage of PlayStation 1 titles. This time, our first episode we did a lot of the mainstream hits, and then last time we did some more off the beaten path games, but still ones that we wanted to look at. But this time I really wanted to delve into the cult kind of games that you probably never played, or maybe you slightly heard of them, but now it's time you should go back and look at them, especially some of the Japanese only ones on this list, because I think now with a lot of the options that we have for importing PS1 games, it's a much better time for visiting a lot of these. So the first title that I wanted to go over was Silent Bomber.
Come on, this game blows.
Lotus is, of course, referring to the ad campaign at the time for this game, and it's kind of funny that he knows about it, because
the only reason I know about it is that you had a poster prominently in your room when you lived at your parents' place.
Yeah, it was a poster that said "This game really blows," because it's a pun off of Silent Bomber. And but it was a really great game. I really love this game, and it goes for quite a pricey amount these days. And I bought this game new because I was in love with it. I had played it on an old official PlayStation Magazine demo disc, and that's really the reason why I got introduced to it. Because I had a subscription to that magazine at the time, and they included demo discs every single month, and that was really a good source of information and exposure for a lot of the games on this list. Actually, quite a few of them I found out because of that, not because of magazine coverage or anything like that. Demo discs tended to have some off beaten path games, and Silent Bomber is by far one of my favorite games from doing this kind of thing. So it kind of has a feel of a Bomberman game, if you can imagine that, but it's a lot quicker. Your character runs and is 3D generated. It's not 2D sprites like most of the Bomberman games, but it's a lot quicker. It is a top-down game, though, so you are looking down, but instead of laying bombs down and waiting for them to explode, which is kind of the more frustrating aspect of what I would say that Bomberman has. What you do is you have a targeting reticle that can lock onto enemies, and you can launch several sticky bombs at them, and then you control when they explode.
That's clever.
Over time, you get more bomb slots and things like that, and there are specialty bombs. There's a black hole bomb, for instance, that sucks in a whole bunch of enemies at once and clears the screen. There's electricity bombs. There's napalm bombs as well, for continuous damage, that kind of thing, of a specific area of the map. And I always really loved this game. It was a fast-paced action game that was sort of reminiscent of the puzzling aspect of the puzzle the puzzle action aspect of Bomberman. So it's a lot quicker than Bomberman ever was, and it's just so much fun. And it had a wacky storyline that I'm not convinced was exactly translated the best. So I never really understood what was going on, despite beating the whole game. There was this cool final battle against the main bad guy on this gigantic chessboard, and you had to like you had to contend with not just the bad guy but his chess pieces as well. So that was always that was really cool. The chess pieces had their own attacks and things like that. So it was just a super super great game, and it's one of those games that shows up on like hidden gems lists. Yeah, I'm sure Metal Jesus Rocks has covered it at one point or another. He's really well known for those hidden gems videos, but this is certainly one that would be in there, and one of my favorite PS1 games. So I wanted to get an opportunity. It doesn't really fit in with our previous coverage because we mainly went over various companies.
Yeah.
And this was published by Bandai, which wasn't a big
Before
publisher.
it was Namco Bandai or Bandai Namco or whatever.
Yeah, and it wasn't a big publisher in the United States at that time. So nowadays that's different. They're huge, but in the United States, especially with the Souls games. But this was like a one-off title that they put out that just was really really awesome, and it sucks that it went into obscurity. It wasn't considered a PlayStation classic or anything like that when it absolutely deserves to be. Any titles that you wanted to go over, Lotus? Because I have quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, there's one I can mention really quickly. This is not a PS1 exclusive, but there's the game D, which is known today as D the Game, because good luck looking this thing up with literally just the letter.
Yeah.
It was originally a 3DO title, and I think like it was called like D's Diner or something like that in Japan.
Yeah, I think in Japan it's called D's Diner, and that's like the name of the diner in the game. Yeah.
There's a diner in that game?
I think so. I think that's where it starts.
Oh, maybe for a second, but like you
Yeah.
go into like this mansion and that's where you are for the entire rest of the thing.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, but yeah.
Like it teleports you into the past. It's weird. But this game was interesting at the time because it shows your character in the first person, so you don't see the character so much, but it shows you when you know how in Myst, when you move from one location to another, like you click the screen and then you're just at the next screen.
Yeah.
But in D, it shows you going through the walking motion, so it's like a smooth video kind of thing. It made it feel more realistic. I mean, if you know what you want to do in the game and just want to get there, then that means a lot of waiting going from one location to another. Simply crossing a room is kind of an ordeal in that game. But it was clever visuals for the time, and also it has an interesting gimmick where you have 2 hours to beat the game. There's no saving or anything. You have a 2-hour run. Go. You can get a good ending or a bad ending depending on an option you choose at the end of the game, and you can get, I think, some kind of perk if you find all these little firefly things floating around. If you take too long, though, forget the good and the bad ending. There's just like a straight up, like super bad, like game over, you failed ending if 2 hours are up, because that the game over, man. You have one shot at this. It makes probably for a decent streaming game in that regard. This is how long the stream is going to be at most.
It's basically like watching a movie, if you know what you're
doing. Sort of, yeah. Also, the game kind of had a little bit of notoriety at the time for being one of the more violent, having one of the more graphic depictions of violence in a video game at the time.
Yeah.
And I think we've already told this story before with Kenji Ino, but he was supposed to have toned down the violence in this game before bringing it to the West, and he was like, oh yeah, I'll get on that. And then kind of like at the last second, like the last second, he was like, all right, I did it, but there was no way he could mail it to the distribution center and have them produce things in time. So he had to like fly over himself, and he did so, and he just handed over the disc that was to be copied, which was the uncensored version, because fuck you, copy this. So we have an uncensored version because the dev circumvented like rules and policy, which is kind of amazing.
He was also a really big rebel at the time.
Well, I mean, there you go.
Yeah, he also he had some kind of PlayStation like event that he was presenting at, and his the PlayStation logo showed up on the screen behind him and then morphed into the Sega logo. He's just like, no, fuck you. I will continue to make my games for Saturn now.
But that
Yeah,
wasn't being a rebel. That was because Sony fucked him. I mean, you could argue that he did the
yeah, but he did it at
uncensored thing.
like a conference that like Sony was running that was promoting his game. Like
Fair enough. But the thing was, like, Sony promised X copies of the game, and they way underproduced. So yeah, so sure enough, like Vice just said, yeah, he was like, "Fuck you guys." So Enemy Zero, PC, Saturn exclusive. D2, Dreamcast exclusive. Fuck you. So that's where that went. But D is now available HD remastered on Steam because it actually got a PC DOS release back in the day. Yeah, and GOG. It actually got a PC. It got a big box PC release back in the day, which I never knew about until like a year ago. But otherwise, you probably, if you ever saw it, it was going to be on Saturn PS1. And PS1 it had like the big long box and had 3 discs.
Yeah,
I actually don't know about Saturn.
These days, you want to play the PC version because it's not as compressed.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Oh, and obviously the game was on 3DO, like I originally said. It was a port of a 3DO game, but nobody had a 3DO. So,
yeah. In fact, his company Warp, he produced with them a whole bunch of games for the 3DO. 2 or 3 of them remain there. They were never ported to any other system.
Huh.
It was really interesting. But yeah, that it was a good title to talk about just because like this was still kind of in the era where they were still trying to figure out what to do with CD media. This was only
Well, yeah, this was pretty experimental. Like it's like a movie. Like you can't do that with a cartridge.
This is only a little bit of time after the Sega CD. You gotta think. So
yes.
Like there's plenty of games in the beginning of PlayStation's life cycle that are similar to Sega CD games, and this is one of them for sure. And then of course we have the horror cult classics Overblood 1 and 2.
Yeah, I unfortunately really don't know anything about 2 except that it's a PAL exclusive, but Overblood 1...
Well, it's not PAL exclusive, it's PAL English.
Oh, excuse me, yeah, it's not exclusive, but yeah, it made it to PAL, but not to NTSC North America.
Yeah.
Or South America, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, Overblood 1, the thing about that game is it's janky, but it's creative. Your character, Raz
It's
Carsey,
absolutely worth your time. It's absolutely worth your time.
Kind of.
I think it is.
like your character is named Raz Carsey for like no reason. He looks like Barry Burton right down to the red like vest kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the game literally has a cold opening. You wake up in like this cryo chamber and you need to go like the first thing you need to do, number 1, you realize that you can actually crouch and crawl in the game and go first person sometimes, but you're in this cryo chamber and you're freezing to death. You need to find a vest to put on so you don't freeze. And like a lot of people who play this game probably died in the very first room because they're not sure how much time they have and they're kind of playing around with the controls and then they just freaking die.
You could die so easily in this game in many different ways. Like there are a lot of like instant deaths.
Yeah, there are some gotcha moments.
Yeah.
And also to save, you could save, I believe, infinitely, but you have to find the little portable tape recorder thing to do it. So you can't save for like the first couple rooms, which really isn't a big deal. But when you're playing for the first time, you don't know that. So you're like, But what's interesting is that you have the guy you can play as, and you find a little robot friend who can do like go into small
What's his
vents. Name? Peepo, obviously. Do I even have to explain this? Jeez. He can go into small vents. He can activate little robot stuff that the human can't. Meanwhile, the human can... I forgot if the robot can jump or not, but the human can certainly jump better. And he can fight with like a gun or his fists or whatever. And like the game is very janky. The controls aren't great. The camera's not great. Every hallway looks the goddamn same. But the story is actually legitimately interesting. Even though there's mainly only 2 or 3 characters in it, it's actually a very clever way of addressing this. I thought like the plot twist in the game was like very clever. What I find interesting about this game, though, is that one of the creators behind it, maybe even the director, I'm not 100%, this was like one of his first projects, if not the first, and he went on to like found and head Level 5 Studios, the company responsible for tons of brilliant titles, including one of my nostalgia favorites, Dark Cloud. I freaking love that game. And I think didn't they do like Ni no Kuni as well?
Yeah,
They did a bunch of really cool stuff.
Yeah, I believe. Level
I mean, I'm listing 2 games. Like they did far more than that, but those are the ones that come to mind immediately. Did they do Layton actually?
Yeah, Level 5 company, video game publisher.
Did they do Layton?
Dark Cloud.
Yeah, it's Level 5. They did Layton. Yeah.
John d'Arc, a Rogue Legacy, all the Layton games.
Oh, they did Rogue
11
Legacy
games.
Yeah, now the guy who made Overblood was not the head the entire time. I'm not sure if he's the head anymore. I think he's at a different position in the company. But like, it's just funny to see like a person's roots, like Overblood on the PS1.
Yeah, Level 5 is big time. They're also the producers of the Yokai Watch series, which was popular.
That's massive. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they were big. They are a big company.
It makes me think of like Johnny Depp. Like, where did you come from? Oh, boyfriends you may or may not remember from Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, it's like that. Like, where did you come from? Overblood.
Yeah, exactly. Humble beginnings for sure.
John Travolta, where did you come from? I mean, asshole boyfriend in Carrie.
Yeah. But
remember that? Remember that role existed in that movie?
But yeah, Overblood is a guilty pleasure. Like it's definitely a B movie a game.
It's not really fun to play, but it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. Bad voice acting and a ridiculous script.
Yeah, well, the script's not bad. I think it's just janky localization.
I mean, people.
Well, that's not the script; it's the voice acting.
I guess.
Also, one little fun fact: someone in my comment section back when I Let's Played the game is in Germany, and he said the German dub was actually quite good.
Germs come from Germany.
I have to take his word on that one, but like that's just amusing to me. It's like, oh, this game actually does have a very good dub. Oh.
I wonder how the PAL version fared with with the localization on that end.
The German version is a good dub.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out. But my next pick is No One Can Stop Mr. Domino. Have you ever heard of this one?
I've heard of it, but I know pretty much nothing about it.
So this one, you are a little domino man who goes around in a set path around a house, and like a whole bunch of different traps and switches that set the traps are all over, and your job is to lay dominoes behind you while you run through this circuit. It's you basically go through the entire house in a circle. And you go through the whole circuit one time, placing dominoes along the way in order to get the biggest combo going in order to trigger switches with them the next time you go around. What you basically do is you run into the dominoes that you have set down the first time around in that circuit, and then you smack them down, and they do the domino effect thing.
Sure.
So that was always a lot of fun because it had all kinds of like switches and traps and things. It is very challenging because there are all kinds of hazards in your way trying to trip you up in the middle of that and screwing up your combo. But I really like this game, and it even got a semi-sequel called simply Domino Rally on the Wii.
No. Domino Rally was the children's toys.
What's funny is I can't believe they got permission to
use that name.
Use that name, yeah, because that was a trademark toy, when we were kids. So I used to play with them all the time. But yeah, No One Can Stop Mr. Domino is a fun game. I put it in that like category with like Mr. Mosquito, just like a really quirky, weird game where you go around a house and you're tiny.
Well, it also kind of makes me think of like the original. I guess several entries, honestly, but like Katamari, like the levels where you're really small and you're just like working your way to get big enough to pick up like shogi tiles.
Yeah, like Chibi Robo's like that too. You're tiny in a big house,
Mm-hmm.
which I have always really liked. Chippendale Rescue Rangers has that theme going on as well.
This isn't quite the same. This is kind of cheating, but Little Nightmares.
Yeah. I see what you mean by that. Sure. And also in that same kind of vein, like really quirky, kind of fun game is Incredible Crisis, which I also found out about Incredible Crisis and No One Can Stop Mr. Damo from those OPM discs back in the day. So yeah, they introduced me to a lot of really great stuff, and Incredible Crisis is way up there. So essentially, what this game is like is it's basically WarioWare, but it has a story.
Yeah, it's a bunch of mini games that are usually different as you go along, and they're very creative.
Yeah, they are very wacky, and they follow different members of this one family when they go through like a really crazy day.
Yeah, and completely different stories, by the way. Like, they don't coincide almost at all.
Until the end.
Yeah, so, like, when they all get back home, they're like, man, I had a crazy day. Like, oh, yeah, you should hear about my day. But, like, all of them are insane.
The most iconic stuff is the dad's, because his stuff is up front.
Well, he's also the first.
Yeah, he's up front, and his stuff is also the lewdest, too, because look, there's this one mini game where you're in a
Ferris wheel.
A Ferris wheel, and the conceit in the localized version is that you're giving a girl a massage.
Yeah, massage.
And it's from an outside point of view, so you don't see the characters, you just see the Ferris wheel going around.
That's actually what makes the mini game harder, because this is a weird thing to bring up, but anybody who's played Zone of the Enders 2, when you're trying to find, there's one area in the game where you're trying to find a location and it's not showing up on your radar, but your partner knows where it is. So you're driving, like, you have to get there without, like, blowing up these invisible mines, is basically the conceit of it. So you know where to go, but not how to get there. So you have to rely on, like, audio cues and subtitles where they're like, oh wait, no, a little more left. Actually, a little more right. Like, that's this game. You can't see either character. How do I know where to give the massage? And you hear, like, to the left, like, up a little bit. Like, so it's tricky. Like, that's why you don't see it. That's the cleverness of the game. But what's funny is that what you said about how the localization makes it, oh, it's a massage.
Yeah.
Even though the localization does that, the voice acting is, like, the most sexy, like, oh,
yeah, no,
it's so funny.
it does give the framework that it's a massage, but it clearly is not.
Yeah, they know that you know.
yeah.
I should say that the one thing that ties the family's stories together is that mysterious woman in red at least shows up in all of them.
Yeah. But there's some really fun stuff. Like there's an Indiana Jones like run away from the
again with the dad. He has a very persistent Indiana Jones boulder. Like he thinks he escapes it, but then like
it's amazing.
It bounces off a wall or something and comes back at him. He's like, oh, what? And he has to keep running away.
There
from
are
it. It's
several
great.
mini games where this boulder is chasing you. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's like I think you said years ago. It's effectively his nemesis.
Yeah, that boulder wants him dead, and he like
just by coincidence, he just can't get out of it.
Yeah,
like, here it is. Do it again. And like I think the little boy gets shrunk down to the size of an insect. And he's like caught in a spider web and has to avoid an insect, which is terrifying. But what you have to do, what's really interesting, is it's almost like you're playing Mario Golf. You wanna like wait for the cursor to hit a particular point of the screen and press the button then when it hits like the green area. But it gets to a point where you have to do that repeatedly, and there comes a point where after like a second or two, the cues on the screen just disappear. So like you'll watch the little cursor slide, and then all visuals of the cursor are gone. So you have to feel in your head like about when you should press the button. It gets very tricky that way.
It's really good. I love this game. It's definitely one of those games that you can easily break out during like a late night party session,
which we did at one of our first MagFests.
Yeah, because it's really entertaining and funny and hilarious, and it's also one of those titles where anybody can pick it up and figure out what to do.
Yes. Although there's only one thing that I hate, but I think that was on purpose, like a troll move, because the game also comes up like 2 or 3 times. Like, you know how in No More Heroes 2, the one game that's not 2D and the one game that carried over from the previous game was that fucking Scorpion game, like,
Yeah, sure.
as a troll? Do you remember the game in Incredible Crisis where you have to frantically grab buckets of water and pour them out of a sinking ship?
Yeah.
All you do is mash the button.
Yeah.
But it goes forever. It gets exhausting. It is
really
so tiring to like frantically mash whatever button for like a minute. Like, it's insane. And like, what's also funny is that the person who's with you in the boat next to you keeps making gestures like, come on, go faster. But like after a point they just start like dancing for no reason. You're not helping at all, you fuck.
I love this game. I think this one commands a pretty penny as well, just because like it's obscure and
it's pretty obscure, yeah. And it's one of those things that like people still don't know about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. Definitely a lot of fun. I really love it. And then this was another big one that I learned about from those OPM discs, Tomba and its sequel, Tomba 2.
Yeah, those are, I don't know much about them except that they're gorgeous and well made.
So Tomba was you're this pink-haired like caveman character. It's basically a Metroidvania. But before it was like super popular, like that form of game was super popular. It may have come out like after Symphony of the Night, but that's about it. Like it basically only had that as an inspiration. So what was cool about it was that you would go through the world, and it's an action platformer. But what happens is, as you're going through it and talking to characters and things like that, you have different quests that open up, and you have like a gigantic quest list. And the only hint that you have on what to do for that quest sometimes is just the name of the quest. So figuring it out is a big part of what makes the game fun. And some of them are very like the major ones are all very easy to figure out, because it's just like get to this place or something like that. But you have plenty of other ones that like where does the barrel go, and you're like, what does that mean? And then eventually you hit a barrel into a river, I think it is, and you have to find out where that river empties out to, and the barrel will be there when you're waiting for you. It has like a gated structure. It's very similar to any other Metroidvania these days. You're going to come across like plenty of areas that you can't get to yet that you have to come back to. It is just a delight and a lot of fun. You fight pigs. Pigs are the main antagonists of the game. And it is super charming. The music is very iconic. It's really a fun game. And the second game has more 3D elements, but it is still very good. It's not quite as good as the original, but it's also very good. So like you can't really complain. I think the first one is one of the like my top 10 favorite games of that PlayStation era. I mean, I got to give it to Metal Gear Solid is my favorite, but this is way up there along with like Mega Man Legends and Misadventures of Tron Bonne. I absolutely adore this game, and I
would go with Simpsons Wrestling.
Oh, what a garbage heap that game is. But yeah, or Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball GT Final Bout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that game was also worth a lot for a long time, because like it was in very short supply before Dragon Ball was very popular in the United States. And
that was that era where like those games would kind of give you sneak peeks of the series that hasn't even gotten that far yet.
Yeah, because like GT was not localized yet, and neither was all of Z.
Yeah, like One Piece Unlimited Adventure kind of did that on the Wii. I mean, like the anime was way ahead of that point, but the localized anime was not.
Yeah,
so that was kind of interesting. So if you only watched it on TV, then like enemies from like episodes like 250 to 300 show up, and you're like, who are these guys?
And it's a big shame about Tomba because I don't think the game sold particularly well, and the company that made them, their name is Whoopee Camp, only made those 2 games. So it really stinks. Because they were both a ton of fun. I really really love them, and I think they're both available on the PlayStation store for PS3. Vita and PSP, but not so much longer for the browser version of those stores.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were certainly cult hits, and it's a shame they didn't do well enough to sustain the company because I think whoever was like the head of that company runs their Twitter account, and they're still doing cool stuff. Like they are they are releasing the official Japanese manga, like translated into English, one chapter at a time. I think they just released the first chapter of that, like this week. So like they're still doing like, they're still celebrating Tomba to this day because there are some fans of it, and I absolutely love that game. I can't speak enough about it. Any other picks for you, Lotus? Because I know I've gone over a few here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm mostly good, really.
Okay.
Because, like, a lot of the stuff that I would have thought of was wrapped up in, like, the company discussions.
Sure.
Because, like, there are some other games that I could mention for the sake of mentioning them, like Countdown Vampires, but I haven't actually played it, so I don't really have anything to say.
Well, another cult favorite one to bring up is LSD Dream Simulator.
Emulator.
Or Dream Emulator, yes, I'm sorry. So this is a Japan-only title that has, like, weird stuff happens while you're playing it. It's a first-person view, and you just see all kinds of weird, wacky, non-Euclidean stuff sometimes.
And touching almost anything transports you to some other place that may or may not make contextual sense.
Yeah, and then every once in a while you'll have like a violent dream as well with this like character who kind of there's a guy with a hat that shoots you. Like he kind of like out of all of the things that like where themes kind of recur in some of the dreams that you have, he's one of them, and it's just a weird, trippy game. I mean, you could guess it by that, but it's certainly an experimental game that is interesting to play for sure. And it does kind of have an ending, like if you've experienced kind of like all of the themes in their totality, but like very few people have actually like experienced the ending.
Yeah, it's way too weird.
They've hacked it into it, but it doesn't really like help you explain any of the stuff that you've gone through or anything. But this is a really expensive title these days, so you can actually buy it on the Japanese PS3 store, for your PSP or Vita. So you can get it that way officially, and I'm sure there are other ways you can think of getting it as well. And of course, you have Grasshopper manufacturers at Suda51's Silver Case, which is now in English on PC and PS4. Is it?
Yeah, PS4. Mm-hmm.
And I certainly don't recommend checking out the original version if you don't know Japanese. But
not to mention that the version we got was a remaster anyway, so it's better. Not only that, but there was also the 25th Ward, which I think was like a mobile follow-up or expansion.
It was a Java phone game, I think.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And we actually have that on PC and PS4 as well.
Yeah. And there's one other Japanese-only game that I wanted to bring up called Mizurna Falls. That was super ambitious for the time.
Yeah. This one I don't think I've heard of.
Yeah, so it kind of has a it kind of feels like Silent Hill, and kind of has like a Twin Peaks vibe to it, but it has like an open like an open-ended feel to it, kind of like almost like a Shenmue kind of thing, like where you go through the town and like there are different things going on and you have to solve a murder that happened. And that's kind of a cult favorite too in Japan. But what was kind of interesting about it is it's Japanese only, and all the characters are clearly American. And it takes place in an American town, but it was never localized. It's like one of those weird things.
It's like Michigan Report from Hell.
Yeah,
It made it as far as Europe, but it stopped there.
I doubt they even know what the hell Michigan is in Italy. But
well, my favorite part is that it does not take place in Michigan. It takes place
Lake Michigan, right?
Yeah, I forgot. I actually forgot what state. Maybe Illinois or something.
Illinois,
but yeah, it borders Lake
Illinois.
Michigan.
Yeah. But yeah. Mazerna Falls, I think, is in the process of getting a fan translation. So,
nice.
It's one of those titles you can look forward to playing once that comes out. And there are plenty of other titles, but I think we should go into fan stuff at this point.
Yes, yeah, getting to be about that time. All right, so we have Living Corpse, who has a couple of comments. One of them is, since you brought up frame rates, I learned GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 had more games running at 60 FPS than their successors. Game companies say they want 60 and 120 to be the norm. Well, you didn't prove that with the PS3, 4, 360, Xbox One, Wii, or Wii U. Keep your promises for PS5 and Series X.
Put your series in a sack, mister.
Yeah, you could stuff your sorries in a sack. And then the other comment was, to this day, there's still the false belief that cartoons are for kids, when South Park is old enough to drink and vote if it was in person. Insane.
Yeah.
And General Ledger responded to that, saying, right? And it's been 40 years since comic books, outside of Archie Publishing, have been predominantly kid-friendly. Yup.
Yeah, I mean, like, ever since the 80s, comics have been made more and more geared towards adults. And, I'll actually take a quote from, it's a recent quote from Alan Moore. Even though he's a crazy person, he does make sense. It's just that he's very extreme about his beliefs, to the point where he doesn't compromise. So I think that's what makes him nutty. But he is right about like a lot of the things he talks about. And one of them, he recently came out and said that he doesn't like comic books anymore. He's retired from writing comics because comic books were meant to be for working class people. Like they were, I mean, they
were like 10-cent literally
exactly.
Throwaway things. Yeah.
They were a lewd, unrefined form of entertainment. Just kind of like Shakespeare plays back in the day. They were meant for the common man. Well, that's person.
The whole. But doesn't that always happen though? The thing that's designed for the poor, the rich eventually get a sense of it. They're like, oh, we can make this premium, and then they just appropriate whatever the thing was.
Well, I was just gonna say cultural appropriation works in all the same ways. In terms of racial and.
No, that's true, but this is like specifically like for like economic stuff. Like lobster, who the fuck wants to eat lobster? They're the insects of the ocean, and now it's like the most expensive food.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy, but he is right in the sense that like in order to keep up with comics, you have to be you have to dedicate a lot of time and money to it.
And good luck keeping up with comics. By the way, have you seen like any of them, how they're always like, oh, to understand this, refer to this other series, issue number 438. It's like, I don't know, what the fuck? You can't keep track of all this.
They've gotten a little bit better in that respect, except if you
okay, because in the 90s and 2000s, it was horrible.
Yeah, I mean, if you are following a specific storyline, typically they stay pretty insulated.
That's usually true. Like, I will say, people complain about DC resetting their universe every 10 minutes, but, like, that's why, so you could fucking have a chance of following it.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend following specific comic book series that don't have any other crossover with any other series. Like, a lot of Image comics are that way. So, like, you can read, like, something like Saga or The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead doesn't, like, cross over with anything. It's just The Walking Dead. Invincible, which is by the same author. there's no crossover, so you don't miss out on anything. You don't have to have 10 years worth of built up knowledge about crazy crossovers that have happened in the past. Whereas with Marvel, even Marvel movies are getting that way, where you don't.
Well, yeah, there's like, what, 21 of them? Like, that's part of the reason I gave up. Like, fuck it. Everyone's like, the new movie's so good. Like, I believe you. I also don't care.
I recommend watching maybe the best ones. I mean, even without all that context, like Thor to Ragnarok is just a delight to watch. You don't really need to know anything about anything before watching that, other than maybe having some context as to Thor and Loki's relationship. But there's some other stuff in there. But like it's fun on its own, I would say. But the Guardians of the Galaxy are often their own little corner of the Marvel universe as well, so they barely cross over. So I think those two movies are really good watches. But but you have a point. You have a point. It's really complicated with comic books, and he wanted to get away from it because what is it, like $5-6 per comic book now? And,
it's really gone up.
And they're loaded with ads and stuff, and
well, they always kind of were.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe not
X-ray
loaded,
specs
but like you would
encounter
encounter the occasional,
But I'll let you continue here with the comment.
Well, give me a second. I gotta get my I gotta finish up my Hostess fruit pie first. All right. So Connor has a couple of comments. I really enjoyed this. The PS1 was my first console and a huge influence on my early years of gaming. I played a ton of games via demo discs that used to come with the magazines. Every month there'd be a new one. Yeah, I already covered that too.
Yeah.
I loved all the mainstream PS1 titles, of course. Tomb Raider, Gran Turismo, Resident Evil, etc.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Tomb Raider. I really messed up in talking about Tomb Raider.
That is a big one.
It was a huge series, yeah.
Yeah. But some of the more obscure titles I enjoyed were Tomba, so there you go.
There you go.
Tombi in Europe, Tombi.
Yeah.
Abe's Odyssey, and Siphon Filter. Little janky, but extremely fun action stealth games.
Siphon Filter, I wouldn't call it a top-tier game, but it has some fun charm to it. You had this taser weapon in that game that could basically reach any enemy that you could lock onto. So even if they were like a mile away and you could get your lock-on reticle to go, you could actually just shock them to death.
Well, speaking of shocking them to death, if I'm remembering the right game, don't they actually fucking light on fire after that's so fucked up.
It's really funny.
Yeah. And then he continues, I've also just replayed the original Silent Hill, currently working my way through the early games as part of my Halloween playlist. And apart from Harry controlling like a shopping trolley full of bricks, it still holds up. Also, just finished Silent Hill 2 and I'm halfway through 3, and I'd go so far as to say that 1 is the scariest in the series. Yeah, it's between 1 and 2 for me, I think.
Yeah.
Where am I? There's something about the PS1 graphics that leave a bit to the imagination. Yeah, that is a major point in Silent Hill 1's favor.
Absolutely.
The bad graphics serve it.
Work for it.
Not to mention the texture warping and clipping that was so prevalent in early 3D games adds to the weird nightmarish imagery. And the other comment, redeeming character arcs. Yeah, I actually had considered this one. I don't know if it was full redemption, but I know where he's coming from on this one. Jaime from Game of Thrones. Sure. In both the books and the series, it's obvious that the writers are trying to make him into the likable villain turned nice guy, but none of the actions or words change the fact that he quite casually shoved an innocent child out of a window with the intention of killing him. Even in the world of Game of Thrones, where everybody's generally doing awful things, no amount of redemption arc can make attempted murder of innocent child forgivable.
Yeah, and he witnessed him, doing, a weird thing, too. So, yeah.
Yeah. His family is all about that, apparently.
Yeah.
That's why he pushed him out.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do it for fun. He just was very blasé when he did it. School Filmer has a couple of comments. I gotta say, I'm excited for Steve and Alex, the Minecraft characters. I've played Minecraft with a friend of mine, building various things in pixel art. Their moveset's interesting too, with materials and whatnot. I've been to the Twins again. I showed off the Keytar. Yes, I played that tune, and they remember where it was from. Watched one of them play Persona 5 Royal, read Rat and Bat Love and Hate, I don't know that one, and Parsnip to them. even if I occasionally cracked up due to their wisecracks at the side, and showed them my travel journal. Forgot my drawings that day, and had a pizza and a good chat, and now they want me to draw Morgana, or Teddy, depending on who's asking, or maybe both. And Morgana and Teddy were the sort of animal mascots of Persona 5 and 4, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind. I like a challenge. And the other comment was, while I mentioned reading, I read some Mr. Smoozel's comic strips. Now he's got comic strips. The lore runs deep with Mr. Smoozel. I wonder if he was nutso in those strips. Who knows? However, I tapped out decently fast because I'd already done Rat and Bat and Parsnip, and I started with the longest sequence first. No wonder I need to rest my voice. Well, when does he go?
No idea what he's talking about.
Well, I'm thinking it's like, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? When is Mr. Smoozel's going to go nutso? Like, you'll have to wait until he goes nutso. I'm sorry. I didn't write the book. I'm only relaying it to you. And then General Ledger has a comment. For bad redeeming character arcs, in general, the villain being redeemed just by being punched by the hero is a terrible concept. Yeah, that is true.
You beat me up,
you beat me, but now that I'm dying, all I wanted was to make the world better in my own way. Like, fuck you. So the villain must be active in their own redemption and do something to atone for their crimes. Outside of that, here's a reference I personally enjoy. Rezo from Slayers is a bit hit or miss. On one hand, he was only motivated out of desperation to cure his blindness, and was genuinely remorseful for his villainy, and he did help the hero stop what is essentially Satan. Yeah, on the other hand, he's the one that summoned Satan in the first place, and for such a petty reason. Not to mention, I don't think he expected to summon Satan the way that he did. Like, he was kind of reborn in the eyes of Rezo and then took over his body. Rezo was not expecting that. He expected to be able to see, and then Satan would be over there. And I don't know what the fuck he was going to do after that. Try to stop him or something. So, like, yeah, his selfishness really blew up, and he did undo the damage he did, to be fair. A lot of villains don't even try to undo the damage he did. He, like, directly undid the damage he did. But yeah, that's fucked. Not to mention all of his weird, creepy science experiments. Like, Zelgadis, like, exists because Rezo fucked with him with, like, chimera magic, and now he's, like, part human, part golem, part demon somehow.
Jesus.
We like, so Zelgadis has Dungeons and Dragons stat boosts, but he hates his existence.
Wow.
Also, the heroes knew about his villainy, and they don't exactly see him as the saint that everyone else does. That is true. Rezo is known as one of the wise men. I don't even know if you ever meet any of the other wise men. But, like, it's one of those things where, like, the public considers him to be a great guy, and in public, he generally is a great guy, but only the heroes know about how fucked up it got. And when he died, they're like, I guess we won't tell anybody. So yeah, like, so he really did undo the damage he did or was going to do to the world. But yeah, like, it is a little cheap to play the well, now that it hasn't worked out for me, let's try fighting against what I've been fighting for.
Sure.
But he did go through with it. Like, yeah, that really depends on your perspective on this one. Now for a question. Living Corpse asks, any supplemental stuff for a series that's not in the main products, but you wish was? For example, supplemental material explains that Stars got their hand on the rocket launcher that Brad throws out of the helicopter at you. That's at the very end of the first game. I always just assumed Stars had a rocket launcher. They just didn't have a need to use it, because it's like, when would you need to use a fucking rocket launcher? But no, apparently Brad got it from busting a weapons deal. Kind of wish we had actually learned this in the game and not have to seek it out from making of books, novels, etc. Yeah, I have a few answers for this. Vice, do you have anything? Because if not, then I'll go first.
I think the entire plot of Halo 4 requires, like, if you want to completely understand what's going on, you need to have read, like, the Halo novels.
You know what? I was going to go into something similar, but yeah, go ahead.
That's real funky. There's a lot of supplemental material for Evangelion that has like really like pertinent information into understanding what the hell is going on in that series.
Yeah, actually, well, to back up what you were saying about, like, the entire plot of a video game. Now, this is no longer relevant because I think this has been patched into the game or put into the sequel or something, but the original Destiny, like the lore and basic premise of the game, you had to like go to the website to learn about.
Yeah.
So the game is just like, do video game things, which is like, well, why am I doing video game things? So like, again, this has been fixed, but that was a boneheaded decision.
Yeah, Xenosaga is kind of the same way. There's a lot of supplemental material that combines all of the Xeno games into one universe. And,
oh, combine it. Okay.
And it's all in Japanese, so like it's only been like fans translated. But that'll give you like the timeline of which like all the Xenosaga and Xenogears and
Actually, if you want to talk about Japanese-only supplemental material that combines games in a series, there is a fan translation of this, but it's called Grimoire Nier, and it goes into how Dragon Guard leads to Nier and how Nier leads to Nier Automata.
Yeah,
and it's a legitimately fascinating read. Because how the fuck do you get from Dragon Guard to Nier? But it does make sense.
I wish that was in English or part of the games. Like why not?
Yeah, I mean, again, you can now read it. It's in English unofficially, but yeah, it would have been nice for us to get that. Also, by the way, if you want to go into supreme bullshit territory, aspects of plot in Nier Automata, like an alternate ending, or like Kingdom Hearts, via fucking live concert, thank God some guy taped that. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I don't...
What the hell chance do we have? Well, even if it were in our country, what the hell chance do we have? I also had a couple of other things. One just kind of pisses me off. Soul Calibur 5. The Soul Calibur games usually come with a bunch of extra features, like character bio mode or exhibition modes. You can see them doing their cool moves. Soul Calibur 5 was very pared down, and there's no bio mode. So who are these new characters, and how do they fit into the main story, if at all? I don't know. Did you pre-order the special edition with the art book? That'll help you. Otherwise, go fuck yourself, I guess. Like that really? You don't have a bio mode? Come on. I don't know who Zwei is, and I'm not gonna find out unless I have the fucking art book. Yeah, like I'm not talking about behind the scenes developer interviews in the art book. I'm talking about basic character information.
Yeah, the Myst games kind of have that going too. Like a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, Myst novels.
Yeah, you have to read the novels that are out of print in order to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like figure out what had happened between the characters. Exactly.
You know what I kind of like? Going back to Resident Evil, this one I'm not so mad at because it's very obscure and esoteric, but this is specifically the Resident Evil, the N64 version of Resident Evil 2. And the reason I bring that up is that Resident Evil 2 on the N64 had what were called EX files, where there were certain files in the game that you could only get in Claire A or only in Claire B, or so you have to play the game a few times. You can never get all the files like at once. You could read all the files though at different playthroughs, and some of them just have amusing background info because Resident Evil 2 was the only Nintendo Resident Evil game at the time.
Yeah.
Like if you only had an N64, you did not play Resident Evil 1. So there was some like backup information about what had happened in Resident Evil 1, little information like that. There was actually a nod to the upcoming Resident Evil 0, which was kind of cute. It talked about like Rebecca and Billy, which was a clever little tease. We wouldn't get Resident Evil 0 into the GameCube. But one particular note was from this character I'd never heard of, and I don't believe is in any of the games to this day. And so it's like, who is this and what is she talking about? And it turns out, I think there might be a fan translation for it now, but there was like a story of Ada, like audio drama that this character was the villain in. And it's Japan only. It's like, all right, that's the reference you made? Like, that's very specific.
Well, you know what lore I am happy that they clarified on in universe? In The Last Jedi, we found out where blue milk comes from.
Not really. We found out where green milk comes from.
I think that was
their
the
verdict's
intention.
still out on that one, my friend.
I think that was their intention, though. Was for it to
like, I mean, where the fuck do you get blue milk on a Tatooine? Do they import?
That's like they had blue milk again in Rogue One. Like how? Like I imagine it comes from like a fucking.
Oh god, the entirety of Rogue One was fan nods to the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Like, it was distracting to the point of being irritating for me. Like,
Yeah.
if you've never seen Star Wars, you actually won't notice. Like, there aren't that many, like, oh, that has to be a reference to something. There's only, like, one or two of those in the movie. But if you do know the references, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, there's way too many.
Yep.
Although I will say one bit of lore that Rogue One addressed that I actually thought was clever was where the name Rogue came from in the first place. That was kind of cute because the Rogue group is in Empire Strikes Back. So there you go.
Yeah, I like that. That's that movie. If you stripped out those cute moments, I would actually like it a lot. And
I thought it was fun. I
moments
liked it, but it's a
from it.
forgettable popcorn movie to me. Like,
Yeah.
fun action movie. Like, okay. Although, actually, one other bit of lore, like the main premise of the movie, because a lot of people were wondering why the Death Star could be beaten by a guy in a small ship with one shot. Like, that seems like a glaring oversight, and it turns out it was intentional. It was Otacon making an intentional weakness in Metal Gear Rex.
Yeah.
Like, that, like, it was done on purpose. Like, that's pretty amusing, actually.
Yeah, but it's so small of a flaw that it wasn't caught, which makes sense.
Well, that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, you have to make it big enough to be exploitable and small enough that your bosses won't notice it. That's
Yeah.
very hard to do.
Exactly. No, that was a cool bit. But yeah, I think we explored that really well. So unless you had anything else to say.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, but my guess is that's probably good unless it's more art book stuff where it's like,
Yeah,
oh
I hate
well, it
that
turns
shit.
out.
Like,
Yeah, like
just
it's
put it
cool
in
when
your
you
game,
have the
man.
art book, but like if you're missing important, like if it's not trivia, if it's actually like relevant information, it's frustrating not to just put it in the thing.
My biggest one is like this is in the actual game, so it doesn't quite meet this criteria, but it's filed away in an obscure area of the game, and it is vital to understanding the overarching themes and like story of the entire series. Which is in Metal Gear, you have to like read the text files to find out that Revolver Ocelot is the boss's son, and like that, like you don't
Yeah,
you
it's
don't
very
know
easy
that
to miss that.
otherwise. You don't know it at all, and that's
Well, that's like Xenosaga. There's this giant database to the point where you're like, dude, I'm not reading all
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
But then you miss important information. So the information is there, but no one's reading it.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah, like-
one other thing. This is another thing that's in game, but it kind of bugs me. Now, first of all, I'm going to give a good example. When you beat Silent Hill 2 and you see the twist, if you look back on the game you've already played, and if you play it again, you might realize the symbolism of the enemies and why they're not trying very hard to fight you, and like the game makes more sense on a second run once you learn the information. Now, what I don't like is if something was made obscure so you don't know what's going on and you couldn't guess. Like when you beat Rule of Rose, they give you a sort of post-game thing, or like an almost post-game thing, because you can get to the real credits, but they lead you to like a post-adventure thing where you're wandering around the orphanage all by yourself. Nobody's there to stop you, so you have free reign of the place, and you can explore certain things, and you're like, oh yes, I remember this from my past, and like it basically explains what the game was, because even when you beat it, you wouldn't put all that together yourself. And same goes for Evergrace. Like if you get every item in the game, or maybe it was every monster, I forgot, one of them unlocked story, one of them unlocked plot, but it basically explains exactly what the story was, and it's like, come on, because like in the Souls games it's really not very obvious, but if you go lore hunting you can figure it out. But Evergrace is like weirdly vague on purpose, and then it's just like, okay, here was what the actual story of the game that you just perfected was. Thanks. So again, that's not supplemental material, but well, it kind of is actually. It's not outside the game, but it's still supplemental. It's literally from the main menu. You have to unlock it after perfecting the game. So yeah, I don't like it when a game is vague to the point where you can't put two and two together eventually. And they're like, see, it's deep because we didn't make sense. Like, like it's deep if it eventually does make sense. You just weren't putting the pieces together. Like imagine if I'm trying to think of a movie where like there's a huge end game twist. I'm not going to explain what the twist was for this one, but Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I've always wanted to see that. Yeah.
Well, there's a reveal at the end of the movie, but imagine if the plot made no fucking sense. And then post credits, they're like, "So what? The story we were trying to tell was this." It's like, well, you're supposed to communicate in the movie, like the thing is, you might be able to predict the end game twist if you notice what all the clues are, and if you recognize them as clues. There's not supposed to be 0 clues, and then they're like, "Aha! What we were actually doing was this," because that's not clever.
Part of the fun is piecing it all together, not like having like all of these confusing pieces that don't lead to anything because you don't have
a reveal is lame if there was no possible hint at all. It turns out that like I actually had like a secret partner working behind the scenes this whole time, and you were in a simulation. It's like, well, I guess I never could have predicted that, but what the fuck? That's not clever. Just because it is a twist doesn't mean it's clever. So that kind of thing bugs me as well, when certain things are considered or are kept intentionally vague to the point where you can't figure them out, and then they're like, well, here's what we were doing in retrospect. It's like, I guess I now know the whole story, but come on.
Gotcha. Well, any other comments here?
That's probably all I can think of, at least off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, that is the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics of your own by submitting questions of your own on the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. Also, really love the comments, guys, and feel free to put in your own answers to the weekly question here. Well,
yeah. And speaking of which, I should mention, like we were on our last question last time, but we now have, first of all, this question. But we also have 2 more after this. So again, I very much appreciate the submissions of comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and please keep it up. Please keep giving us more so we have some in the backlog. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on pretty much anything.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play... Oh, I'm out of order. I ruined everything. It's all gone. Start the whole podcast
Scratch
over,
it,
please.
reverse it.
Yeah, reverse it. If you're interested in... So you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And... wait for it, here it comes. First try every time. If you were interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince. Nailed it.
You stumbled, but you landed.
Yes.
On somebody's feet, maybe not
solid silver medal.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening once again. Thanks for all the engagement, and we will catch you on Tuesday. Catch you then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.